My name is Camila. I'm 31 years old, and I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with my mother, Teresa, and my younger brother, Matthias. I've been the one keeping this household afloat for nearly a decade. I work as a nurse, night shifts mostly, which means I spend my days sleeping and my nights keeping strangers alive. Mom hasn't worked since I was a teenager. She says her nerves can't handle the stress. Matthias, at 27, claims he's finding himself and spends most days streaming video games to a dozen followers. I pay the rent, utilities, groceries, and even the subscriptions Matthias uses for his so-called career. I never complained. I told myself it was my duty. But duty feels a lot like chains when no one says thank you. It started unraveling on a humid Thursday in June. I'd just come home from a double shift, bone-tired, when Mom burst into my room. "Camila, guess what? Your brother has the opportunity of a lifetime," she announced, beaming. I forced myself to sit up. What kind of opportunity? Matthias appeared in the doorway, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. I got accepted to a gaming tournament in Miami. If I win, I could get a sponsorship. But I need $15,000 for flights, hotel, and equipment upgrades. I laughed, not out of joy, but disbelief. "Matthias, I don't have $15,000. I barely keep us above water." Mom frowns like I'd just kicked a puppy. "Don't be selfish, Cammy. This is his dream. You're the stable one, you can figure it out." I bit back my anger. I've been figuring it out 4 years. Maybe it's time you both did, too. Matthias rolled his eyes. "You just don't want to see me succeed." I didn't answer. I couldn't. For the next week, they froze me out. Meals without me. Whispered conversations that stopped when I entered the room. I told myself to ignore it, until something happened that I couldn't ignore. My godfather, Ernesto, showed up unannounced on Sunday evening. He hugged me tight and handed me a brown envelope. "There's $25,000 in here. It's for a land deal I'm finalizing next week. I can't keep it at home, too many people come and go. I trust you more than anyone. I promised to keep it safe." I slid the envelope into a locked metal box under my bed. Nobody knew except me and Ernesto. Or so I thought. 2 days later, I came home from work to find the box pried open, the lock snapped. The envelope was gone. My chest tightened. Only one person would be brazen enough to go through my room like that. I stormed into the living room where Mom was sipping coffee, eyes glued to a telenovela. "Where's the money that was in my room?" She barely looked at me. "Don't take that tone with me. I gave it to your brother. He booked his Miami trip. The rest we used to pay off the electricity bill and buy some things we needed." I froze. That money wasn't mine. It was Ernesto's. He trusted me with it. Her face hardened. "Well, you should have told me. You know Matthias's future is important." Before I could reply, there was a knock at the door. Ernesto walked in, smiling, until he saw my face. "Camila, I came to get the envelope. The deal's tomorrow." I couldn't speak. My throat burned. I pointed at Mom. She gave it to Matthias. "It's gone." Ernesto's jaw tightened. "Is this true, Teresa?" Mom's eyes darted to the floor. It was just sitting there. "And Cammy never helps her brother." "Enough," Ernesto cut in, his voice sharp. "That money was for my retirement land. Without it, the contract falls apart. You have 72 hours to get it back, or I'll file a police report." Mom's face drained of color. Matthias, oblivious, walked in holding a suitcase. "Uber's here. I'm off to Miami." The silence that followed could have shattered glass. Ernesto turned to him. "If you get on that plane, I'll make sure you're met at the gate, by the police." Matthias laughed like it was a joke. It wasn't. 3 days later, they couldn't come up with the money. Ernesto kept his word. My brother was arrested for theft. My mother blamed me for letting it happen. I moved out that week. I found a studio apartment closer to the hospital. Ernesto forgave me, even moved into my building to be near someone he could trust. It's just me now. No silent resentment at the dinner table. No banging on my bedroom door asking for just a little more money. For the first time in my life, I'm living for myself. And I don't plan on going back. Ernesto stepped inside, shaking the summer heat off his jacket. He always dressed like it was 50 degrees out, even when the sidewalks shimmered in the sun. "Hey, Cammy," he said, his voice warm. "I came to pick up that envelope. The deal closes tomorrow morning, and I need to get the cashier's check ready." Behind me, my mom muted the TV. The apartment suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. I swallowed hard. "Ernesto, there's a problem." His eyes narrowed just enough to tell me he didn't like where this was going. "What kind of problem?" I glanced at my mom, who was now sitting straight, her coffee cup on the table. She avoided my gaze, her fingers tapping against her knee. "The money's gone," I said, my voice flat, because if I let it shake, I'd lose control. He blinked. "Gone? What do you mean gone?" Right then, Matthias walked in, a suitcase rolling behind him. He was wearing new sneakers I'd never seen before and a smug expression that made my skin crawl. "Uber's here," he announced. "Miami, here I come." Ernesto turned, his gaze like a hammer. "If you get on that plane, Matthias, you'll be met at the gate by the police." Matthias laughed like it was a bad joke. "Come on, Tio. You're not serious." "I've never been more serious in my life," Ernesto said. The room went dead quiet. Matthias dropped his suitcase handle, the smirk fading. "This is ridiculous." "Mom said." "I don't care what Mom said," Ernesto interrupted. "The money was mine. And right now, you're walking around with stolen property." I stood back, watching it all like an out-of-body experience. I'd seen arguments in this apartment before, but never with Ernesto involved. He was the only person my mom actually seemed a little afraid of. Matthias looked to her for backup. She gave him the smallest nod, like she was silently telling him to hold his ground. "Fine," Matthias said. "I'll wire it back after the tournament. I'll win, you'll get your money, and everyone's happy." "That's not how this works," Ernesto said. "You have 3 days. You miss that deadline, I make a call." After Ernesto left, slamming the door behind him, the apartment exploded. "You had no right telling him it was me." Mom shouted at me, her face flushed. "You had no right touching something that wasn't yours." I fired back. "I did it for your brother," she said, her voice rising. "Because you never will. I've done everything for him. For both of you. Every bill, every grocery bag, every single expense for years, but that doesn't matter, right? Because I didn't send him to play video games in Miami." Her eyes narrowed. "You've always been bitter. You think because you have a paycheck, you're better than us." My voice cracked then, not from weakness, but from rage. "Better? No. Just tired of being treated like an ATM with a heartbeat." Matthias picked up his suitcase again. "Whatever. I'm still going. You can tell Ernesto to relax. You walk out that door with that money," I said, "and it's theft. You get arrested, and I won't lie for you." He stared at me, his mouth twitching like he wanted to say something nasty, but couldn't quite form the words. Finally, he rolled his suitcase into his room and slammed the door. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed the image of Ernesto's face when I told him the truth, that subtle shift from trust to disappointment. It gutted me more than I expected. At 3 a.m., I heard Matthias leave. The wheels of his suitcase scraped across the tile. The front door clicked shut. I didn't stop him. Maybe I should have. The next morning, Ernesto called. "They are not answering my messages," he said. "Did he leave?" "Yes." "Then I'm making the call. I'm not waiting 3 days." "Ernesto, no, Cammy. You did nothing wrong. You told me the truth. But if I don't act now, the money's gone forever." By the time I got home from my shift the next night, Matthias was sitting in the living room with no suitcase and a pale face. Mom was pacing like a caged animal. "They took him off the plane," she said before I could even drop my bag. "Security. In front of everyone. Do you know how humiliating that was?" "Not as humiliating as having your godfather's trust destroyed," I said. Her voice cracked with venom. "This is your fault. You could have stopped it." I stared at her, the last thread of patience snapping. "No, Mom. I've stopped enough disasters in this family. This one's yours to own." That night, I started thinking about my escape. The apartment wasn't mine, my name wasn't on the lease. But everything inside it that kept them comfortable had been paid for by me. And maybe it was time to stop. If you want, I can take part 3 deeper into Camila's decision to move out, Ernesto's next steps with the police, and the fallout between her and her mom, keeping the slow burn plus cliffhanger ending formula so readers stay hooked. Do you want me to roll straight into part 3 now? Mean, I said slowly. Someone went into my room, broke the lockbox, and took it. Mom gave it to Matthias for his tournament trip. Ernesto turned his head toward her, and for a second, I thought she might shrink into the couch. Is this true, Teresa? She lifted her chin like a defendant refusing to plead guilty. It was just sitting there. And Camila never helps her brother with anything. This was his chance. Ernesto's voice sharpened. That wasn't her money to give. That was my retirement land. Without it, the contract falls apart. Mom waved a hand like it was no big deal. Matthias is responsible. He'll pay you back. That's when I laughed, bitter, sharp. With what? Streaming tips from 10 viewers a night. Mom glared at me. You're exaggerating. No, Ernesto cut in, his tone final. You have 72 hours to get that money back to me. If you don't, I'm filing a police report. And I won't care who ends up in jail. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. The next morning, the apartment felt like a storm had rolled through and left everything damp and heavy. The blinds were still drawn. The air smelled faintly of coffee and fried eggs, but my stomach twisted at the thought of eating. Mom was at the kitchen table, her robe tied loosely, eyes red like she hadn't slept. She didn't look up when I walked in. Matthias was in his room with the door shut. The muffled sound of a video game bled through the wall, cheerful music that felt wildly out of place. I poured myself some coffee, the silence between me and Mom stretching until it snapped. You don't care about family, she said suddenly, her voice flat, but sharp enough to cut. They booked him, he said without preamble. He's got a court date. I told the police I'd drop charges if I get my money back in full within a week. Do you think that'll happen? I asked. Not from him, Ernesto said. Or your mom. But I'm giving them the chance. After that, I'm done playing nice. I hesitated. Ernesto, if it comes to it, I'll testify. I saw the lockbox. I know what happened. There was a pause. I didn't want to ask, but good. I hope it doesn't come to that. When we hung up, I just sat there on my bed staring at the wall. The weight in my chest wasn't just about the money, or even the arrest. It was about the fact that no matter how this ended, nothing in this family would ever be the same. That night, I tried to talk to Matthias. I knocked on his door. No answer. Matthias, I said, can we talk? The door opened a crack, just enough for him to glare at me. You ruined my life. I clenched my jaw. You took money that didn't belong to you. I wouldn't have if you'd helped me in the first place, he said. This was my shot. Your shot to what? Live off other people forever. His eyes narrowed. You think you're better than me. I think I'm done being used, I said, and turned away before I said something worse. The door slammed behind me. By Friday, I'd made my decision. I waited until I was alone in the apartment. Mom had gone to a neighbor's, Matthias was who knows where. I pulled my suitcase out from under my bed and started packing. It was strange, for years I'd dreamed of leaving, but when it was actually happening, there was no dramatic soundtrack, no triumphant rush. Just a quiet, steady sense of relief. I packed my uniforms, my laptop, my work shoes, and the few personal things that actually belonged to me. I left the couch, the TV, the dishes, all things I'd bought, but didn't care enough to fight over. By the time I zipped the suitcase shut, the knot in my chest had loosened. I called Ernesto. Do you still have that extra unit in your building? Yeah, he said. Why? I'm moving out. Tonight. Good, he replied without hesitation. I'll help you with the boxes. Mom came home just as I was wheeling the suitcase to the door. Her eyes went wide. What are you doing? I'm leaving. You can't just walk out. This is your home. No, Mom, I said, my hand on the doorknob. This is the place where I've paid to keep you and Matthias comfortable while you both treat me like I'm nothing. That's not a home. You're abandoning us, she said, voice trembling. I've been abandoned for years, I replied. You just didn't notice because I was still paying the bills. Her mouth opened like she wanted to say something, but I didn't give her the chance. I stepped out into the hallway and shut the door behind me. Ernesto met me downstairs. He loaded my suitcase into his truck without a word. As we drove toward his building, the city lights flickered on one by one, and for the first time in years, I felt like they were for me. That night, I slept in a quiet, clean apartment where nobody banged on my door or asked for money. It wasn't much, just a studio with peeling paint and a window that stuck halfway open, but it was mine. By Monday, word had spread. My aunt called to say Mom was devastated and Matthias was embarrassed. I told her I was done playing the family scapegoat. She didn't call again. When I left for my night shift, I locked my door and knew, really knew, that nobody could take anything from me now. If you want, in part 4 I can push forward into Matthias's court hearing, Mom's attempts to guilt-trip Camila back into the family, and Ernesto's final decision about whether to press charges, with another tense cliffhanger to keep it bingeable. Do you want me to go straight into part 4 now? I set the mug down harder than I meant to. I care about family more than anyone here. That's the problem. I've been carrying this entire family on my back for years, and the one time I draw a line, I'm the villain. You let your brother get dragged off a plane, she shot back, eyes wet. No, I said, my voice steady. Your choices got him dragged off a plane. You took money that wasn't yours. You pushed him to take it. You made this mess. She stood up, her robe swaying around her. You're cold, Camila. You always have been. That's why you're alone. That one landed. Not because it was true, but because I'd heard it so many times growing up that part of me still believed it. I turned away, swallowing down the lump in my throat. I'm alone because I learned not to need people who drain me dry. Later that afternoon, Ernesto called. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Not the temperature, the atmosphere. Even the light that filtered through the high windows felt muted, like it didn't want to touch anyone inside. I sat in the back row of the small courtroom, my jacket pulled tight, watching Matthias fidget in his seat at the defense table. He wasn't wearing a suit, just a wrinkled button-up with the sleeves rolled too high, and he kept adjusting the collar like it was choking him. Mom sat beside him, her hand on his arm, whispering things I couldn't hear. Every few minutes, she'd glance back at me, her eyes full of accusation, like I'd put him there personally. Ernesto was a few rows ahead, calm, arms folded. He didn't look back at me. He didn't look at anyone. The judge came in, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes. Let's get this over with, she said, her voice flat. The prosecutor explained the charges: theft, unlawful possession, attempted flight. Matthias's public defender stood up and spun a story about misunderstandings and family disputes blown out of proportion. Then Ernesto was called to testify. He spoke evenly, telling the judge about the money, the lockbox, the land deal, the missed closing. He didn't embellish. He didn't need to. The facts alone were damning. When the defense attorney cross-examined him, trying to paint it as a loan Matthias had intended to repay, Ernesto shook his head. There was no agreement, no permission. He took it, Ernesto said, his voice steady. And if the police hadn't stepped in, I never would have seen a dime of it again. Then it was my turn. I walked up to the witness stand, my palms damp. I swore in, sat down, and faced the courtroom. The prosecutor asked me to describe what happened when Ernesto came to my apartment that day. I told them the missing money, Mom's confession, Matthias's entrance with the suitcase, the confrontation. When the defense tried to rattle me, asking if I hated my brother or had a personal grudge, I kept my voice even. No, I said. But I'm done covering for him. And I'm done letting my mom decide what's right when it's not her money. After I stepped down, I avoided Mom's glare. The judge leaned back in her chair. Here's what's going to happen. Mr. Castillo, you will return the full amount within 30 days. Failure to do so will result in a formal conviction and a possible jail sentence. You are also ordered to stay away from your godfather unless he invites you into contact. Matthias's mouth opened, but his attorney put a hand on his arm. Court adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Mom was waiting for me. You happy now? She snapped. You humiliated your own family in public. I kept walking toward the steps. No, Mom. He humiliated himself. I just told the truth. You've always been jealous of him, she said, following me. He's talented. People like him. You hate that. I stopped so fast she almost ran into me. I don't hate him. I hate what you've turned him into, someone who thinks rules don't apply to him, that people will always clean up his mess. You're so cold, she said again, her voice trembling. No, I said. I'm finally warm enough to stop letting you freeze me out. I walked away before she could answer. Ernesto caught up with me in the parking lot. You did good in there, he said. Thanks, I replied, though my voice felt tight. Do you think he'll pay? I think he'll try to stall, Ernesto said. But the judge gave him a deadline. And if he doesn't pay? I'm ready to push it. I hesitated. And my mom. He sighed. She'll keep defending him until the end. Don't let her drag you back in. That night, back in my studio apartment, I made myself a simple dinner, pasta with garlic and olive oil, and sat by the window while the city buzzed below. It wasn't just the legal stuff weighing on me. It was the quiet. For years, my life had been full of noise, TV blaring, doors slamming, voices arguing. Now it was just me, my thoughts, and the sound of traffic. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't sure who I was without all the chaos. 3 days later, Mom called. I let it go to voicemail. Camila, it's your mother. I need you to help Matthias with the repayment. He's got part of it, but not all. You make good money. It's only fair. I deleted the message without listening to the rest. By the end of the week, Matthias texted me himself. Asterisk, need you to spot me 2K. I'll pay you back in a month. Asterisk, I stared at the screen. Then I typed back, asterisk, no asterisk. A few seconds later, another message came through, asterisk, wow. Cold. Asterisk, I didn't answer. That weekend, Ernesto invited me over for dinner. His wife made roasted chicken with potatoes, and we ate at their kitchen table like nothing bad had happened. At one point, Ernesto said, I've been thinking, maybe you should help me with some of my real estate work. You're sharp, and you've got a good head for numbers. It wasn't just a job offer. It was a lifeline. I'd like that, I said. But even as I accepted, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. 30 days was a long time, and in my family, a lot could go wrong in 30 days. The first week after court was quiet. Too quiet. No calls from Mom. No texts from Matthias. It felt like standing on a beach watching the tide go way out, knowing a wave was coming, but not knowing when or how big. I threw myself into work. At the diner, I picked up extra shifts. At night, I started shadowing Ernesto on small property inspections. He'd hand me a clipboard and rattle off terms I barely knew, but by the end of each visit, I understood a little more. For the first time in years, my energy wasn't going into plugging someone else's financial leaks. I could actually focus on my own future. Day 8. Mom finally called. You need to come to dinner, she said. No hello, no small talk. I'm busy, I said. It's important. Your brother has news. I looked between them. You both know this isn't going to work. You're asking me to gamble my money so he can maybe pay back Ernesto, so he can maybe stay out of jail. How is that my responsibility? Mom's voice went sharp. Because we're family. I put my napkin on the table and stood up. Family isn't a license to keep stealing from each other. I left before dessert. Day 14. The text started again. Don't be like this. We can fix this together. You're the only one who can help. I didn't respond. Day 20. Ernesto and I were walking through a half-renovated duplex when his phone rang. He listened for a few seconds, then said, understood, and hung up. That was your mom, he said. My stomach dropped. What did she want? She's trying to convince me to give Matthias more time. Says he's got half the money and just needs another month. I felt my jaw tighten. And you? I told her the deadline's the deadline, he said. If I cave, it'll never end. Day 25. Mom showed up at my apartment. She stood in the hallway with a Tupperware container of empanadas, holding them out like a peace offering. I don't want to fight, she said. I just want to talk. I let her in, mostly because the smell of the empanadas made my stomach growl. She sat at my little kitchen table and started in. You know I raised you both alone. I did the best I could. I don't want to see your brother in jail. You also don't want to see him take responsibility, I said. She sighed. You've always been so rigid. Life isn't black and white. It is when it's about taking something that isn't yours, I said. She leaned forward. Please, Camila. Just loan him the last 2,000. He swears he'll pay you back. I shook my head. I'm not bailing him out. Not this time. Her eyes hardened. If you turn your back on him now, you're turning your back on me too. I stood. Then I guess that's what I'm doing. She left without another word. Day 29. Matthias texted, hope you're happy. You're about to watch your own brother get locked up. I put my phone face down and didn't touch it again that night. Day 30. Ernesto called at 8 a.m. He paid half, he said. Other half's missing. Judge is going to issue a warrant. I closed my eyes. What happens now? He's got 48 hours to make up the difference, or he's going in, Ernesto said. I thought about calling Mom, but I already knew how that conversation would go. That night, I walked the city streets for hours, past diners closing up, past neon bars spilling laughter into the cold air. Somewhere deep down, I knew this wasn't just about Matthias anymore. This was about the part of me that still thought maybe, one day, my family would act like a family. But families don't change because you hope they will. And sometimes, the wave finally hits. The next morning, I woke up to a knock on my door. Not the polite, Two-tap kind. The pounding, wake up your neighbors kind. When I opened it, Matthias was standing there. His hoodie was pulled up, eyes bloodshot, breath visible in the cold hallway air. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside, mostly to keep my neighbors from eavesdropping. He went straight to my kitchen, opened the fridge without asking, and grabbed a bottle of water. "So," he said between gulps, "you know I'm short." "I know," I said. "I've got a plan." I almost laughed. "You had a plan last week." "No, this is different," he said, leaning on the counter. "I found a guy who'll buy my watch. It's worth more than the rest of what I owe. I just need to get to Jersey today to make the deal." I crossed my arms. "So what do you need from me?" "Bus fare. And a little extra in case the guy tries to lowball me. I'll pay you back tonight." "Tonight?" I repeated. "Swear on my life," he said. I shook my head. "You've sworn on your life so many times I'm surprised you've got any of it left." He smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. "So that's a no?" "That's a no," I said. He slammed the water bottle on the counter, hard enough to splash. "You're really okay with letting me go to jail?" I stared back. "I'm okay with letting you face the result of your own choices." He left without another word, the door rattling in its frame behind him. 36 hours left. I tried to work my lunch shift without thinking about it, but the tension was a constant weight on my chest. By the time I clocked out, my phone had 4 missed calls from Mom and 2 from unknown numbers. That night, Ernesto called. "Heads up, your mom came by my office." I groaned. "Let me guess, she's still trying to convince you to give him more time." "It's worse," Ernesto said. "She offered me her car as collateral." I sat down on the edge of my bed. "She can't do that. She needs it for work." "She said she'd figure it out," he replied. I told her no. I'm not taking her car, and I'm not extending the deadline. I pinched the bridge of my nose. She's desperate. "She's enabling," Ernesto corrected. 20 hours left. I was making coffee the next morning when my phone buzzed with a text from Matthias. "Don't believe everything Ernesto tells you. He's not the saint you think he is." I stared at it for a long time, then typed back, "Don't try to change the subject." No reply. 12 hours left. I was half asleep when my phone rang. It was Mom. "They took him," she said, her voice shaking. I sat up. "What, already? The deadline isn't—" "He tried to sell the watch to that guy in Jersey," she said. "It was fake. The guy called the cops. Now they're holding him on fraud, too." For a moment, I didn't say anything. "Camilla," she said softly, "you have to help him." "No, Mom," I said. "This isn't mine to fix." "You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "If he goes to jail, I don't know if I can survive it." I closed my eyes. "You've been surviving his mistakes for years. Maybe it's time he survives his own." She hung up on me. That afternoon, Ernesto called. "He's being transferred tomorrow. The judge isn't budging. This is it." I expected to feel triumphant, like justice had been served. Instead, I felt hollow. I walked for hours that night, past shuttered storefronts and flickering streetlights. My hands were jammed in my pockets, my mind replaying every time I'd covered for him, every fight with Mom, every time I'd told myself, next time will be different. Maybe it wouldn't ever be different. The next morning, I stood outside the county jail, watching the gray van pull away. Inside, somewhere in the back, Matthias was headed to a place where I couldn't visit without permission. I thought about waving, but I didn't. Instead, I turned and walked toward the bus stop. It wasn't relief I felt. It was something quieter. Something that felt like the beginning of an answer I hadn't even known I was asking for. For the first 2 days after Matthias was taken, the phone didn't ring. No texts, no calls, not even from Mom. It was eerie, like the volume of my entire life had been turned down. No begging, no bargaining, no guilt trips. Just silence. On the 3rd day, Mom broke it. She called at 7 a.m., her voice sharp and cold. "I hope you're happy," she said. I sat up in bed. "Mom, I didn't—" "You put him there," she cut in. "You could have helped, and you didn't. You chose Ernesto over your own brother." I rubbed my forehead. I didn't choose Ernesto. I chose not to keep cleaning up Matthias's messes. "You think you're better than us now," she snapped. "Just wait until you need family. See who's there for you then." She hung up before I could answer. I thought her anger might fade after a few days, but it didn't. At the diner, she stopped coming in for her usual lunch break coffee. At the market, she saw me in the produce aisle and turned away. She'd built a wall. And for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to knock it down. 2 weeks later, I came home from work to find a plain white envelope in my mailbox. My name was scrawled across the front in Matthias's handwriting. I stood there in the hall, debating whether to open it right away or toss it in a drawer. Curiosity won. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper. "Camilla, I know you think I'm the villain here. Maybe I am. But you need to understand, Ernesto isn't who you think he is. He's not just some good guy helping you out. He's got his own game, and you're a piece on his board. If you don't believe me, look into that building on Ashland he's renovating. You'll see what I mean." I read it twice, my brain running in 2 directions. Half of me wanted to crumple it up and toss it. This was Matthias, lying, manipulating, trying to wedge himself back into my head. The other half, well, it remembered all the times I'd assumed he was lying, only to find out later he'd told some sliver of truth. The next day, during a property walkthrough with Ernesto, I casually mentioned the Ashland building. "How's that one going?" I asked. He didn't look at me. "It's fine. Just needs more work than I thought." Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. That night, I pulled out my laptop and started searching. City records, permits, property tax listings. The Ashland building wasn't listed under Ernesto's name. It was under a holding company with an address in Miami. That didn't mean anything shady by itself, but it didn't exactly scream transparency either. 2 days later, I mentioned the letter to my coworker Danny while we were rolling silverware after a shift. "You think your brother's telling the truth?" she asked. "I think he's telling something," I said. "What are you going to do?" I tied the last napkin roll and dropped it in the basket. "Find out for myself." The following Saturday, I walked to Ashland. The building looked like it had been halfway gutted and then abandoned. Windows boarded up, scaffolding rusting in place. No workers, no dumpsters. A weathered sign read, "Coming soon, luxury lofts," in bold letters, but the phone number had been scratched out with spray paint. I stood there for a long minute, wondering if Matthias had planted this seed in my head just to make me doubt Ernesto. But the truth was, I was doubting him now. That night, I got another envelope. This one was postmarked from a town 2 hours away. Inside was a grainy photocopy of what looked like an invoice. Payment from the Miami holding company to Ernesto's business. The date was 2 weeks before Ernesto told me he bought the building. No note this time. Just proof that someone, maybe Matthias, maybe not, wanted me to see this. And now I couldn't unsee it. I didn't tell Ernesto about the invoice. Not yet. It wasn't that I thought he was guilty. It was that I wasn't sure what he was guilty of. Over the next week, I started paying closer attention during our walkthroughs. When we visited the duplex on 14th Street, I noticed him avoiding certain questions from the tenants. When we drove past Ashland, he didn't even glance at it. One afternoon, after we wrapped up an inspection, I asked, "How'd you get into this business anyway?" He smiled like it was a casual question, but his hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Family," he said. "My uncle was in construction. I just learned as I went." I wanted to push, to ask if that learning included doing business through shell companies in Miami, but I held back. Instead, I went to City Hall on my day off. In the records office, a clerk named Lila helped me pull the Ashland property files.